p.m. So, are we ready?
Okay.
All right. So I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. And if we could stand to salute the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Superintendent Buckley, could we confirm the notice of posting of the meeting?
Yep, meeting notices were posted at the SAU office, on the website, in schools, and they were sent to the town offices.
Okay, thank you. We don't have a non-public session scheduled for this evening, so we can go right on to item number 4. Before we do, I just wanted to make a brief comment. If at any time that the board feels it necessary to override the chair by a simple majority vote, just as a reminder, you're all in a position to do that. For any action that might have been taken by the chair in representation of the board, on behalf of the board, or for whatever else you might want to be able to do that. So just as a reminder. And this evening I'm also going to read at the appropriate time our policy, if you will, board chair's policy regarding public comment. So, moving on to item 4. The agenda is proposed as presented. Does any board member have a modification? Okay, hearing none, we'll assume the agenda is approved as written. We're now at section 5, intercommunications. I would ask for all attendees to sign in. And please print your name and town, and then return that clipboard to the clerk at the end of the meeting. There should also be a second clipboard there, which is item 5B. If you would like to receive regular school board packets of information, which we all get as board members, you just simply need to sign up on that sheet, and an email digital form will be sent to you from Sue Cross, that's scross@sau4.org. We don't have any recognition scheduled this evening for 5C.
Chair, if I could just, I did want to recognize the several people from the high school did go to, on Sunday, the union leader had their annual kind of athletics brochure, and I just did want to point out that Allison Simmons, who's a senior here, did win the Scholar Athlete Award for the state of New Hampshire, so I will pass this around just as a recognition for her at the state level.
And we will add that to item 5C. She's at the high school?
Correct.
Okay. We're now at public comment, and I would just like to read this statement that we usually start out the year with regarding public comment. The board appreciates members of the public taking time to talk to us about subjects of interest, policies, and procedures. We set aside this time during meetings or at special meetings to hear from the public. Your comments should be directed toward the chair and relative to board policies or procedures administrators established to carry out those policies, or other subjects of interest that may be on your mind. Please state your name and town each time you speak for the clerk to properly attribute your remarks and comments for the public record. As your item may or may not be on the meeting's agenda, your particular view or opinion is not, and as such, please do not expect a response to any questions posed or raised as part of your comments. This segment is not a dialogue, but is intended to allow you to express your point of view. Please note the footnote at the bottom of every page of our agenda on this topic. The board is gathered to conduct its business as duly elected representatives by law to do so, and also to hear your opinions on matters, but without being scheduled as an agenda item in advance, it is not a discussion item. Please remind me of this fact should I inadvertently allow a response to a comment by a member of this board without first waiving the rule against doing so. This is not an appropriate time or place for anyone to make comments of a personal nature about any district employee or anyone else. Persons making comments that violate the privacy rights of district employees will be asked to terminate their remarks. If a person or parent has a concern with one or more employees, the board will refer that person to the appropriate employee or the superintendent. If the board refers your concern to an administrator for investigation, the board will hear about it in a future meeting, and you can expect the superintendent or another district employee to make arrangements to meet with you at the appropriate time. Thank you again for taking time to discuss district business with the board. As a reminder, once again, please state your name and town each time you speak for the clerk to properly attribute your remarks and comments to the public record. That being said, I don't see any elected officials in attendance this evening. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So we can move right on to members of the public. If anyone has any comments to make, this would be the time.
Yes.
Susan.
Susan Holby, Bristol. I was saddened and disheartened at the deliberative session when members of the public stood up to speak in hopes of, or speak out against losing 19 and a half paraprofessionals. And an amendment was made to put money back in the budget in hopes that we could keep these people. And then to hear later on that it doesn't matter how much money is in the budget, we're still going to lose these, hands in the classroom in replacement with 3 certified teachers, I guess, what they are. And I think it's great that we want to add certified teachers, but I don't think it would be a responsible move to be pulling hands out of the classroom all at once. I get it, if they're supposed to improve child's, the behavior of the children, or help them out so they're not, not in need of the paraprofessionals. But I think that that's going to be some time down the road. It's not going to be immediate, and I don't think it's smart for, the safety of our children who are still in the classrooms. If we want to add teachers, fine, let's add some certified teachers, but let's not pull out all these extra hands until we see some improvement in the kids and make sure that it's, like I say, it's a responsible thing to do, to move them. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else? Okay. At this time, any public comment can be made on any topic of interest. The second go-around will be following our discussion on matters of that are scheduled on the agenda, and so just comments at that point would be limited to just those items on the agenda. But we do want to hear from you before we take any action or votes in the event that you can influence us. Okay, that brings us to our faculty staff liaison, Mimi Freeman.
I feel like I should have a lot to say because I haven't been here forever. I was away for one, snow day for one, or snow in the afternoon for one anyway, and then I was sick. But other than the fact that 100 days of school have already gone by, I really have nothing to add at this point.
Okay. Well, we're glad to have you back. We do not have our student council liaison with us, Kate and Tracy, this evening. So we will move on to item 6A. school board minutes for approval. You have before you the blue minutes in the packet. And I would entertain any corrections that anyone has to make for the meeting of January 6th. Hearing no corrections,
I've got one
John?
on the January 6th meeting, 6B, second to the last line. I think it should read, "This article will be done at Monday's meeting," rather than "be at done."
Okay, so you want to delete the word AT?
This article will be
Will be done at Mondays. Just reverse.
Reverse the done
I'm sorry,
there.
okay. Get that, Leah?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
Just in our draft Hill meeting, it doesn't list
That's not what we're dealing with, just the minutes of the meeting, board meeting. Anyone else, is there a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Okay, there's a motion to approve as amended by Ruby. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Sue. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions?
One year, so I don't know whether they're good or not.
Okay,
See how short it is?
so the vote was 2, 4, 5 in favor with 1 abstention. And this evening we have Mr. Belvin absent. Okay, we did take the vote, so that's recorded. What was that?
Is Mr. Wilson coming?
He has not spoken to me, so at this point he's absent. You do have, for information purposes, other minutes in the packet. The Hill Subcommittee draft minutes, the budget hearing draft minutes, the budget hearing draft minutes for 7th and 10th of January, both meetings. John, did you have a correction for the Hill minutes, since that is what
Need to add,
the committee?
It should actually really just go back to when the Hill Subcommittee
Yeah.
meets again.
Yeah.
That's where the correction would get made.
right, need to add those present.
Okay, make a note to do that.
And on the budget committee, the third year, that in there, it's 2.25%, and it's really 2.5%.
Yeah. That's informational,
Yeah.
that Stacy can point out. This is just observations on the part of the school board. We don't have jurisdiction over those. Any other comment on any of those meetings minutes? Okay. That brings us to section 8, which is correspondence and reports included in the packet. There are substantial reports this month from middle school in particular. I was glad to see that. Pretty broad report. Includes action of the PTO, which appears to be substantial there. Glad to see the parental involvement like that. A lot of activities going on at the middle school.
I have a question
Tom?
on the Bristol Elementary School. They mentioned that they're doing winter assessments using the NWEA, or the other elementary schools using that assessment
Yes,
as well.
everybody uses that assessment.
Just none of the other schools mentioned it.
Yeah, they all do it.
question on the monthly budget report. Looks like we're $5,298.93 in the negative.
For speech services.
Yeah.
There's a couple lines within, that's part of the special ed budget, there's a couple lines we're working with. We are over budget on that. We do have some contingency funds. Also, we have some, we're going over budget right now on the transportation lines, which are, we will be transferring funds from areas like tuition or our contingency to cover those areas.
So we are really over budget then?
Yeah, we're over budget for out-of-district transportation by, close to 9,000. And slightly over budget in speech, which we can cover within, this will happen in different areas of the budget.
I think when we looked at that previously, it was salary and benefits lines that were over where we had a new employee as opposed to contracted service. So
Right.
I'm guessing what,
So we're under budget in contracted services. So there's a lot of areas that we're seeing substantial savings this year too, so. Yeah.
The principal payments,
I knew you were gonna bring that up. That's an obvious one that you should be able to budget right on the dot, right? So these are on our QSAB bonds. I believe this was, I saw that interest was charged as accounts. We're gonna have to do journal entries to restructure those. The postings, which are done by our accountant, I see just a couple of problems with the journal entries on those. So it looks like she may be charging both interest and principal, and it looks like I saw a double journal entry. So for example, I think the Bristol Elementary line was almost double. So that's a double payment that either was done via journal entry or not. So I'm talking to Karen about that just to find out why, because that's an impossibility. So that should be right on target for budget. To answer your question.
Okay, there's no further commentary on reports, although I would direct you to the business administrator's report as we segue into the next item of business, which is item 9A. At this point, I'm going to recuse myself from discussion on this topic and turn the meeting over to Ruby Hill as vice chair, and I'm going to sit in the audience for this.
Okay, you're on, Mike.
I'm sorry.
Isn't it the next item?
Yeah, I want to do that on 9B. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. Mike, can you just talk to us about the report?
I'd be happy to.
From the fund balance.
So there's some conversation, there's some conversation back at the January board meeting that there's concern over the district complying with the RSA 198-4B2 regarding its budgetary fund balance retention. The language in that says that the fund balance cannot exceed 2.5% of the current fiscal year's net assessment. So really, it was just, what is net assessment? Because if you're looking at the local assessment, clearly, it did not equal 2.5%. So I talked to the DRA and looked at their calculation, and it's actually the net assessment of both local and state assessments. So you can see in the calculation below, what you would initially think is that the local assessment is the revenue line that we take in for the school district, which is the $10,875,212. The 2.5%, you add in the state assessment as well, which is an additional $4,236,000, which gives you the $377,000, and we chose to retain $350,000, giving back $7,134 to reduce taxes. So we are fully compliant, and all is well. which is good. This is not something we want to be out of compliance on. And it seems strange that it would be wrong because it's given to us by the DRA, so it had been a combined effort to be wrong on. So this is, we are all set.
Good, thank you. The reason this came about was at the budget hearing, I think we had looked at the numbers real quickly, and having the superhuman capacity to calculate kids immediately came up with 2.5% of $12 million being more than the 300, or less than the 350,000 that we had voted to retain as a fund balance, so we kind of wondered about that. And thought originally it was on the entire budget. That didn't fly, and so Mike dug out the explanation he just gave you, and we're cool. So the retained fund balance is accurate. We did have the authority to do that, and we voted to it properly. Okay. Is there any further discussion on item 9A? Okay, hearing none. Then I'd like the record to show that I am recusing myself on the discussion for item 9B and turning the meeting over to Ruby Hill.
Okay. So, Mike, I assume you're on now for this?
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Of course, yeah, we're all
So,
set.
and I can frame it real fast. So in general, we received notice with LGC no longer exists. It's Health Trust and Property Liability. Property Liability has now merged with Health Trust to create one. We were informed that basically in 2016, they will no longer kind of exist.
They're waiting really for the court to decide on that restructuring. So the question, the court originally ruled that something like $17 million of assets from Property Liability Trust had to be handed over to the Health Trust, which really wouldn't make sense. So now they're just restructuring the combination of the two. They still have, two websites where we enter claims on and so on. Plan going after is very simple. We would go out to bid like we would on this item as if it was in contract. We don't have any reason to believe that formerly LGC is in a major financial problem. It's a matter of the holding of these assets. So they have assets. So
Who
worried about that.
Who else could potentially bid to offer this for us?
There's several private sector companies and insurers that can do this. There's also, many of you know and heard of another risk pool, which is Primex. I've used them before as well, so there's plenty of companies that would be happy to get our business. This is a big piece of business for us, for them.
Didn't the legislature talk about making the LGC and property liability a for-profit corporation rather than non-profit?
I don't know if the legislature has authority to do that. Right now, it's such a legal up in the air, I don't think risk pools, personally, I don't think they would work well in that environment, but yes, I think you're right. But right now, it's in the hands of the court system, so I really can't speak on it too much more than that because it's fairly complicated. It's a little bit more than what I'm able to get into.
What we know is our contract ends in 16.
Right.
And so we'll be looking next year to just go out to bid and get other options.
And then he accused himself because he's on the board of one of the insurance funds.
Yeah.
Okay, rates? Okay. Want to come back?
Okay, we're now at item 9C. This is the formation of the Facilities Committee and steps we should take for publicity for the public members, for nominees and discussion of who should be nominated to appoint at our March 24th school board organizational meeting, which will be held approximately 2 weeks after the election.
I won't be here on the 24th. Just want to say it now.
Maybe we'll reschedule that.
That maybe to a different day. If I can jump in, I have I have actually spoken with administrators. We have 2 administrators willing to serve on this committee. And if the board is okay, I have a press release that I can send out tomorrow, seeking community input, community members who are interested in serving to send me a letter of interest and kind of what their background is in capacity to serve on a committee of building and facilities. If the board would like that, I can send that to the papers tomorrow to get some advertising out. We can put it on our website. I can get the principals to put it in their newsletters. Just again, try to get the word out to get a variety of different people on it.
What does the press release say?
The Newfound Area School Board is seeking 2 community members to serve on the newly created Newfound Area School District Facilities Committee. The goal of the committee is to review, develop, and propose a 10-year capital improvement plan that will provide for safe, healthy, accessible, and well-maintained facilities in the Newfound Area School District. Community members seeking a role in this committee should have an understanding of facilities and facility needs. This will be an ongoing committee that will meet at various times throughout the school year and summer. If you are interested in participating on this committee, please send a letter of interest along with your qualifications to SAU4 Central Office with the address. Applicants will be received up until Wednesday, March 19th. It is anticipated that the school board will appoint members at their March 24th board meeting, so that might change if we...
Yeah, just put March organization. As far as organizing, I found it helpful to organize as early as possible during the school year rather than wait until April in the recent past. So that's my proposal for doing so early. So I wanted this on the agenda this evening to discuss this and let everybody know that committee is a new subcommittee of the board that we agreed to as a result of the K-8 report in November, or I should say, school configuration report from the superintendent. And if anybody has any comments on it or concerns, now's the time to give us your input to offer the superintendent some additional direction.
I just want to know how we'll decide, what if we get 10 people? How do we decide on the 2?
So you can go in, I would say you can go into non-public and have an open dialogue around it because it's really the reputation of people and you would want to look at people's qualifications and see if you have more than 2 that are qualified or have a lot of knowledge. You can expand that, you can change that, you know what I mean? I think you want to think about it. Are there different people from different communities? What does that look like?
The only concern I've got is that I guess I'd like to see the facilities committee be flexible in terms of what its ultimate charge should be. And I suppose the committee could, and/or the board could change that at any time after we establish it. But
the language in there was the charge that the board approved at the level.
And the
Whatever that
volunteers have to
means
know what they're volunteering for.
Yeah.
yeah, I just questioned, my recollection was that did we agree precisely on capital improvement?
Yep.
As opposed?
Actually, that was the language that the board decided on, because I think I had the original language was a 10-year facility maintenance plan and in parentheses capital improvement plan, and the board voted to take out facilities maintenance plan and keep in capital. We also added, which I didn't include in here, this charge does not include daily operating matters that have been delegated to the superintendent. I think that was necessary for the press release, but.
Does anyone have any further comments on this? Okay, we'll.
Don, just that I think what you were saying, that as things progress, the board may identify something that we want them specifically to look at.
Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying that the board could change the charge at any time based on what the needs are or become or may be. I just wanted to leave it fairly broad rather than imply that, I mean, we're rediscussing what we already agreed on, so. I recall the discussion.
Would still be a capital improvement, but you might want them to focus on one school versus another.
Yeah, and it could be.
One grade level versus another.
Right, and capital improvement could be either a renovation to a school, to all schools, or security improvements, or a brand new building, whatever. I suppose with clarification specifically of what the topic is, I think back onto our K through 8 study, and I just feel that there was a lot of misunderstanding about that. And so when we agreed on capital improvements, I just don't want that to be interpreted as, or misinterpreted. But that can be made clear as the committee's work is undertaken. Any further discussion? Okay, let's move on to item 9D. So far, we have apparently no action necessary on the first 3 items. Informative only. Here we have a copy of the proposed school calendar. If you can pass that down.
There's 2 coming for the public if you want to see it.
Do you have 3 there?
So, doing the calendar for the first time this year, for me, not doing it for the first time, but in this district. So I have, I met with principals and administrators, we reviewed the calendar, taking into consideration as much consistency as we could in the sense of full weeks and not breaking up weeks. I then sent the calendar to Deidre, the president of the teachers union, as the contract requires. Deidre passed that along to her representatives. All the buildings met and gave her feedback, which she sent to me. Deidre and I then had a follow-up meeting, and they had a couple of changes. I think out of the 3 changes they requested, we made 2 of them. And so I thought they were good. I'll kind of go over in general. So something new that they agreed to was instead of having a teacher workshop day on the last day of school, so the students would have a day and then the teachers had kind of a follow-up day, they agreed to make that another professional development day at the beginning of the year, so that we will have actually 3 teacher workshop days at the beginning of the year for all staff, which will be nice. It will give us a good opportunity to work with them. As you know, one of those days is required by contract to allow the teachers to work in their classroom independently. So it really gives us 2 days to have teachers to do professional development. This contract has this calendar has us starting school on August 25th on that Monday with a 4-day week, with a 4-day weekend for Labor Day. We have an early release day in September, which is a nice time to give us an opportunity to check in. Where are we at now that school has started? What do we need to go? And to set the tone for the year. October 10th is teacher workshop day. It's NEA conferences. Again, by contract, we have to have that as a teacher workshop day. November, we have November 11th for Veterans Day off. It's a little odd because then we scheduled that Friday in for parent-teacher conferences, which is usually held in November. It kind of makes it hard to find a day. One of the things that all of the schools got consistent on this year was having a dialogue around having half a day the day before at night for parents who can't come during the day for parent-teacher conferences. So it would be Thursday night and Friday morning would be scheduled for parent-teacher conferences. Our original plan was to do them on Monday, except we didn't think, teachers aren't really jumping up and down about coming in on a Sunday. So we did move it to Friday, and everybody seems to think that will work. It still gives us 2 solid weeks without vacations. The 26th will be an early release as we have this year. We had lots of dialogue around the Christmas vacation. We did land ourselves with the union's consensus of having the 2 weeks off. A lot of districts did that this year. We ended up having it off anyway because of the snowstorm, but so you'll do notice that is a little bit different having the 2 consistent weeks off. January 14th, again, will be another early release day, Civil Rights Day off. February vacation, 1 vacation week is the only days. March is a solid month of no days off. April 17th will be a teacher workshop day. That will be elementary school parent-teacher conferences, and middle school and high school, it will be a workshop day. April vacation is the traditional week. Then we'll have Memorial Day in May. So that lands us at June 15th will be an early release day for students as the last day of school.
Just a comment, April teachers this fall.
Oh, somebody else pointed that, thank you.
I
But
noticed
there's no way that you could have it so you don't end on Monday.
Yeah, you know, we talked about that except for the fact that it is likely that we will have a snow day. So I never worry
Oh.
about actually ending on a Monday
Okay.
because the chances of not having a snow day.
Yeah. At least one.
Yeah,
How many have we had this year?
we have had 4.
So those would, if it happened this year, then that would be a full week.
Correct, correct. The little, by state law, we have to have 10 days available for snow days. And so you see the little asterisks are our 10 available days. So every day we're out, we just add another day on.
there was considerable concern this past year about starting so early.
Yeah, so I did talk to Plymouth. Plymouth is actually starting the same time they did this year, the week before. And I had a lengthy conversation with them, and they are fine. They will work with us on the vocational program and stuff like that. So they agreed that it was fine that we didn't start that week. It was very early, I thought.
Everything looks okay for me, except I don't like the parent-teacher conference day in November because kids go Monday, have Tuesday off, then go back for Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah, we actually originally, we had it on the 21st, and then in meeting with Nada, it was one of their, could we move it to the week before so that at least it was a solid week, a broken up week and a solid week. At least you got 2 solid weeks in. There is really no good week to put it.
Yeah, I just think it's easier for parents if they're taking a day off, to take it off on a Friday, but to take it off on a Friday on a week when they might have taken Tuesday off anyway, because a lot of people don't get Veterans Day off as a holiday, that becomes problematic for people who are working.
And the night session, couldn't that be Monday night rather than Sunday night? If you had the conference day on Monday?
Yeah. I can ask, but I'm thinking with the day off the next day, I'm thinking teachers will,
The same reason.
yeah. It's just, it's a hard, it was a hard one. Like this year was on a Monday, so it was easy, you know. With it being on a Tuesday, the ideal would be on Monday.
Is the Fed, yeah, is the
That's a
federal
federal
holiday on
holiday.
Tuesday?
Yeah.
Not easy.
I think that was the only day that people were like, oh, I wish it was on a Monday. I think it just wasn't a good setup.
I have a novel idea. Instead of asking them, why don't you tell them that that's the day it's gonna be?
I mean, they could do conference in the middle of the day, Monday into the evening, so you still have the, or you could have them on the 21st, which I know breaks up that week, but what it gives you is 7, like, class days in a row, from the 12th to the 20th. I don't know. That's the only concern we have, is that's not good for parents who work.
So the night, if the session for the 14th is the night of the 14th?
So they would do the Thursday night.
Night, not the
Yeah, and the goal of that was, there are parents who just can't take the day off of work to come to a
Yeah,
parent-teacher
no.
conference, so we were trying to accommodate parents as well,
Yeah.
you know, being able to do both.
Well,
The night one makes sense.
and I'm glad it's consistent this time.
Yes, and that was something we worked on, because it wasn't consistent across buildings, and so we made it consistent.
I think we'll have high absenteeism that week, one day and then 2 days.
I see several things I don't like about it, but,
I don't know what else to do with
all right.
it. I mean, we could go the week before, the 6th and the 7th. Is that considered?
Everything was considered. I mean, we had lengthy conversations around it. We also, you know, you don't want it too early, you don't want it too late, you wanna, this was where after at least 3 big group conversations with both NADA, with their teachers, with the administrators, this is where we all kind of landed looking at all of the days.
Boy, I'd be hard pressed to not go with the superintendent's recommendation on this one, personally.
Well, last year we had 2 months to consider this. We got it ahead of time and looked at it, and then looked at it again the next month. And this is my first view of it. So,
I mean, we can certainly bring it back. I don't have a problem bringing it back. It's just, I don't know what else, there's not a whole lot of
right.
other options.
Last time we had suggestions, because Sue and I said, go back and talk to Plymouth about starting later. And none of our suggestions ended up in the
Plymouth is done, they've already approved their calendar.
Yeah, and we kind of didn't care about their calendar. We said,
Well, that's what I said. I was like, we're not starting that early.
Even the 20.
My issues here are, we're starting way too far before Labor Day. We got a 16-day break for Christmas that, I mean, 2 days makes a difference in learning loss, and that bothers me a little bit. I don't like the busted up week in the middle of November. I mean, there's just so much about this I don't like. I'm not sure getting the kids out earlier in June is worth what we're doing on the other end.
Well, remember, if you start, so take those 4 days away, add them to the end, and now you're into that last week of June, getting out of school, if you have a snow day. I mean, this is a fairly traditional week for school districts now to start that week of the 25th, somewhere within that week. That's kind of become the traditional start of school week. As one who, oh, I'm sorry. I would say, as one who came from a district whose contract didn't let us teachers start until after Labor Day, last year when we were in school on June 30th. It's not a nice sight. I think this is a fair calendar. I think everybody had lots of input.
The Christmas vacation is a little long.
Yeah, we had a lot of conversation. So it's interesting when you flip so the flip is that, so the days that we would be in school would be the 22nd and 23rd. And so one of the conversations the teachers had was, ooh, we're gonna be teaching, you know, and not that it's the first time we have to teach, is that, you know, the day before Christmas Eve. And so this year it was the last 2 days, so Christmas was over with, New Year's was over with, if we had come to school. You know, kind of the festivities are done. They felt giving the 2 weeks off for parents to have that time, and students to have that time, given that it was the day before Christmas Eve they would be teaching on. Again, that was a consensus. The board can say no and have school Monday, Tuesday. But that was taking everybody's input.
Why can't we schedule school by computer like they do the NFL games? It's a tough one. Just not gonna please everybody.
We don't have much of a summer up here, and it's getting shorter and shorter.
And our summer is July and August, it
That's
really
right,
is.
yeah, it's-
Right, and we're
June-
here
June
not
is
less
still
than
not-
2 months.
The warmest weather. not only that, I mean, summer camps and stuff where these kids go to work, they aren't open in June. You know, they usually start July.
And, well, neither are tourist things, just
Yeah.
on the weekends, so.
Yeah, it just... And we're just cutting it off at one end and shoving it on the other. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, we can think about this a little more, maybe, before we take action on it, hear from some in the public that might have an idea. And think about reconsidering it. We can take action when we're ready. Is there further discussion now? All right, we'll move on then to item 9E, and we'll take up action on 9D when it's appropriate. Okay, so I have this as review of the deliberative session results. As everyone knows, the school board's budget was in fact amended up and in fact passed.
The budget committee's budget.
I'm sorry. That's technically
Just to make sure,
correct.
yes.
That's technically correct. The school board budget ended up being approved, which meant that the school budget committee's budget was amended up. I sit corrected. Point is, we have the budget that we had put together before the voters. If that budget is defeated in favor of the default budget, then we'll have even more money available. So the results of the session, as far as budgetary issues are concerned, leave us where we stand on that with our own recommended budget at this point in time. The other comment was with respect to the SRO, and I'd like to be corrected if this is incorrect, but having funded it the way it was funded at $0 means that we cannot implement a school resource officer, even if we were inclined to do so on our own. It's a no means no concept by virtue of the vote of the deliberative session. Is that comport with your understanding, Stacy?
Correct.
Does anyone else have comments on the deliberative session results? Anything to share? According to my notes, we had about 220 people there. That sound about right?
Pretty good turnout. Not like last year.
Yeah,
192 exactly.
192.
Actually, that's how many could vote.
Yeah, I guess I was counting bodies.
Yeah, that was from the vote, so.
If they all voted.
Yes.
Yeah, that's another thing. When you don't take a ballot vote, it's hard to determine exactly who's voting from what town and what have you, but there simply no need to do that.
Even with a ballot vote, not everybody votes many times.
Yeah.
So, but that's close.
Yeah, they may be in attendance, of course, but choose not to vote. Or they vote a blank.
But it still shows as a ballot.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to include that on tonight's agenda in case anybody had any additional comment about it. Concerns. Okay, given the results, we can now move on to item 9F. Doesn't appear that we'll have any action on 9E when the time comes either. So 9F has to do with the determination of changes on the recommendations of warrants for the second session. Given the change in votes on the SRO or rather the results of the warrants that were affected on the SRO and the budget, we have the opportunity to re-vote a recommendation to put on the ballot. Correct, Stacy?
Correct, just on those that were changed.
Just on those two. So the subject for discussion here is, when we take action on it, whatever motion you may be inclined to vote, as a result, we can then make the change for what it would say on the ballot. Recall that the SRO was a 3-to-3-to-1 vote, which failed to support it. And of course, our budget recommendation, what was that?
It was 2 to 5 to 0 to recommend the article,
Yeah, it was a little confusing.
resulting in a recommendation that, yeah, it was a little backwards, so, yeah, so if there's no motion to change those, then what was on the warrant will be posted on the ballot.
Yeah. So that's the purpose. I think, given the change in the will of those that attended deliberative session, probably something we want to consider, at least for the budget article. If not both, although.
Yeah, I think I'd have to change my position on the SRO as well.
Okay. So when we come to action on that, there will be most likely some sort of action that we'll take on that. That brings us to discussion on 9G, which is a brief review of the mailer error and discussion of remedies. In the mailer that went out on the warrant that we put out to, I guess it was about 7,500. Turned out that the matrix on the back, had it been labeled differently, it would have been accurate. But this is actually year 2 of the raise if it passed. And so I was concerned about that, and in discussions with NADA president prior to the deliberative session, both Ruby and I had discussed with her what would be appropriate in her mind to make the correction, because I didn't want it to be an issue at deliberative session. So what we discussed was the possibility of letters to the editor, under the board signature perhaps, an ad in the newspapers, and what else?
I didn't take any notes, so I don't remember what
I think it was, and to mention it at the meeting,
Yep.
which I did
Which we
do.
did.
Well,
So,
since it never came up at the deliberative session, they really need to do anything.
well, that's because I took proactive action to meet with the NADA president and discussed in advance what would be an acceptable remedy. So rather than have it come up as an issue, we were told that a correction stating that information properly would be acceptable.
You know, maybe next year the native president ought to be involved in drafting something like that.
Drafting something like,
Well, we're doing the mailer and stuff. They should, support of the teacher salary contract is as much on them as it is on us. There was 2 parties to that negotiation, we came to an agreement.
yeah, this was a school board mailer, however,
Just,
so I see where you're coming from. This was just a matter of making an administrative error that we can simply correct. I think we should proactively do something, good on a commitment to the native president.
I suggested that, like newspapers, when they make an error, then they follow up with a correction statement. So something like that in our papers of record, I think would be an appropriate solution.
Yes, meeting.
Did you put it on the website?
Oh, that was the other thing you mentioned as well.
We talked
yes.
about that. We haven't done anything, we were waiting for this meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, that was the other thought process we had as well. So creating the correction, I think, is a matter of a task that we could either assign the SAU or have those of us that created the document come up with something. So it's something to think about when we take action on this, if we decide to.
You wanted to say something?
Oh, yeah, this is about another item, just for clarification. I've been told by the Secretary of State's office that all the polls have to open at 8 o'clock because we're voting for counselor for District 1, and that's a state position.
Oh,
So, yeah.
so that's an additional correction.
So that is, that.
But that must have just, because we,
All of the polls are
yeah,
supposed to.
I was gonna say,
It was hard for me to get an
because they
answer, but
didn't, we sent this to them, and they
Yeah.
confirmed the times. And we had even a change
These would be the
afterwards.
times.
And we
for
did
town
have,
meeting,
we
yeah.
did have an announcement that New Hampton, I think, was also opening at 8.
And see, they may have gotten word.
Word after that, yeah. I mean, I think, remember, these went out
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
And I didn't say anything about deliberative because I had been unable to get a response. But I finally did, just at the end of last week. Whether
People-
everyone will, I can't guarantee it, but they're supposed to. Alexandria will be open at 8.
One of the least known positions that people go for,
Yes.
but they have a lot of power.
Okay, any further discussion on that? We'll look for some action on that individually under 9G. Hearing none, we'll move on to 9H, which is the policy for evaluation of the school board, policy AFA, Alpha Frank Alpha. And as part of that discussion, anyway, after we hear from the superintendent, I would like to agree on a date for the superintendent's evaluation, which is coincidental this month to that same task. Stacy, could you talk about the school board evaluation
Yeah,
process?
so on your policy, it talks about doing a self-evaluation as well as an evaluation of school board operational procedures. Form will be distributed annually at the beginning of March to each member of the school board, the superintendent, SAU administrators and principals, and school district staff and community. So I went back and tried to recreate what had happened last year, and so you did a Survey Monkey with the survey on it, and it was sent out. So I can certainly do the same thing. We can certainly send links of that. Basically, when you do Survey Monkey, you get a link. We can send that out to you folks that you can go in and do it. We can send it out to our teachers, and then we can probably do a press release for the community of different papers with that link. Or, check out our website with a link there is probably the easier way to do it, to get information from the community if they would like to participate.
Yeah, I think those results are planned to be evaluated in May.
Yes, it says the school board members will return completed forms. The responses from each group will be summarized and will be published before the annual meeting of the SAU board in May.
What are the papers that we send back to?
Put it